Oof, that will ruin his weekend.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Vikings Cavalcade featuring a pair of very dejected hosts.
Very dejected.
And on today's episode, we're going to go ahead and just kind of recap the game, see what we liked, and talk about what we didn't like, which you can probably guess is quite a bit.
Yeah, there was quite a few things I saw in that game that, you could take away certain parts of the game where there were good things that happened, but a lot of the other parts, sloppy's first half, better second half is pretty much what I saw.
Was it sloppier than Game 1 against Detroit?
I'd say it was probably exactly as sloppy. Like, it was just a lot of miscues. Ponder wasn't looking confident. The offensive line was looking not great. AP really couldn't find a lot of running room. It just was a disaster. But then in the second half, it looked like they were coming back, and then they ended the last drive with a field goal rather than a touchdown. So they pretty much beat themselves at that point.
Yeah, going back to one of the first points you made, I too felt a lot of deja vu in that first half, just thinking, oh God, the offense is just not doing anything. They're going to make the defense stay on the field for like the entire first half and get worn down. And we know how that went last week.
Yeah, we pretty much saw the same thing. And the offensive line is a big concern for me because they look like a different bunch than last year. It's the same exact guys, though. They're just not, you can't blame the whole loss on Ponder, because the offensive line was just not blocking for him.
Yeah, I mean, Ponder actually made some pretty decent plays as the game went on. I mean, we talk about, how is Ponder progressing? Is he progressing at all? That was one thing I actually saw a little bit of today. Yeah, he still made the same old Ponder mistakes, but I did see progress. He did a decent job of leading the team back in the second half to an almost victory. But like you said, that had to be a touchdown. You get down 4th and goal, and this was off of a turnover of your own. I think it was LaTroy Guion stripping Matt Forte.
That was an awesome turnover.
And I was on my way down here to the Twin Cities to visit you at that time, and when that happened, I just thought, holy cow, the Vikings are going to drive down the field and ice this game and actually beat the Bears at Soldier Field.
Yeah, there were a few parts where I thought that they were going to actually take it for touchdowns, and they ended up in field goals. Like, we had momentum going and building up for us in the second half, but it didn't stick.
Which was a problem from last year, too. The Vikings not finishing some really big drives. I think that PA said it on the broadcast that at one point the Vikings had back-to-back drives that had gone a total of 26 plays for 160 yards.
Ugh.
But I think both drives ended in field goals. If both of those drives end in touchdowns, if one of those drives ends in a touchdown, we're talking about ball game over, Vikings win, and we're 1-1. So it's just really disappointing that we're still seeing the same kind of problems of the Vikings not being able to finish their drives and having to settle for field goals. As much as I love Blair Walsh, I'd like to see some more touchdowns.
Right, and after 2 weeks seeing Ponder play in these first two games, he had an all right second half with the Bears, but I just personally I want him benched. I want Castle in there. I'm not seeing enough from him to see that he can take this team to the playoffs. What are you seeing?
I don't know. I mean, I saw little bits and pieces, but the same thing that you were just saying. I mean, I saw some progress, but again, he's still making the same mistakes that have caused us to kind of damn him, to kind of condemn him in the whole process.
Right, but you've given him a full year as a starter. He had almost a full year as a starter the first year. if he hasn't got it by now, I just don't think he will.
And I mean, they even brought in the weapons for him. I mean, we saw Cordero Patterson bring the opening kickoff back for a touchdown, although the Vikings still didn't use him as much as we maybe thought they would, especially late in the game. Why not send him on another screen pass? Yeah, he had the one that went for no yardage, but that's because he had no blocking. You give him the kind of blocking on a screen pass that you need, he could house that sucker like Percy Harvin.
Oh,
That's
absolutely.
exactly why they brought him in, because they wanted him to be kind of a bigger, I'm not going
versatile.
to say better, but more versatile Percy Harvin.
Right, and he has all the potential in the world to be that, and we saw that today with that kick return, how he can make people miss and just turn on the jets. But as long as Simpson's playing well and Greg Jennings is obviously Greg Jennings, he's not going to have more than a slot position. Even with Jarius Wright there, I mean, they might split time there, or I don't know, maybe bring him in on design plays for Jerome, or instead of Greg at some point. He's got to get more playing time though. I'm a big Patterson believer. I think he's going to be a good player for us.
Yeah, the Vikings need to find a way to use him, just kind of utilize him more effectively. I mean, we saw it last year. They had Percy Harvin. He was touching the ball in all sorts of ways, running it and catching it and just doing all sorts of stuff, kickoffs, whatever. I think that the Vikings ought to try some more of that in the upcoming games, because, again, that's why they brought him in, to kind of be a replacement of sorts for Percy.
Right. I think the Browns game is the perfect time to do that. You're going to have AP who's going to run all over that defense, and then, maybe utilize Cordero in certain situations, and he can make defenders miss. The Browns defense is nothing special. I mean, they're a little bit upgraded from last year, but it's definitely the easiest defense we've faced so far. It's a good time to show what we got.
Yeah, and then there's the matter of that London game that Pittsburgh game in London.
Right, which looks winnable too, but so 2-2 is very possible. Not a bad start, but I'm still just 0-2. 0-2 never feels good. I don't care who you are.
Yeah, and that was one other thing I wanted to talk about, but I think we'll get to that in another segment, because I do have one very big thing, kind of a speech of sorts that I kind of want to say about that whole stat and how weird it really is.
Okay. Well, why don't we take a break right now? We'll come back and talk to you guys a little bit more about the Vikings.
All right, you were listening to Vikings Cavalcade. See you back here in a bit. Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to coverage of the 0-2 Minnesota Vikings on Vikings Cavalcade. Brandon, do you think we're the reason the Vikings are 0-2?
Kind of think we are, Jake. And, it just makes me really sad, and I just want to play this guitar. And, to be quite honest with you, I kind of feel like crying in a corner right now.
Well, stay tuned if you want. We'll leave a light on for you.
Oh, yeah, at the cavalcade.
At the Cavalcade.
We'll leave it on for you.
Stay tuned. Welcome back to Vikings Cavalcade, ladies and gentlemen. We have ourselves a very interesting topic to talk about here in this segment, along with some others. Brandon, as you know, the Vikings dropped to 0-2 with this most recent loss today.
Yes, they did.
And yeah, it sucks. We hate it. But I've got a very interesting statistic for you. Since the playoff field expanded to 12 teams in 1990, when teams have started 0-2, only 11.6% of those teams have made the playoffs. Why do you suppose that is?
Well, because when you start at 0-2, not only do your players lose confidence, but the fan base loses confidence. And I think, that can affect players too. I know they say they don't listen to what the critics say and the media says about them. If I'm an NFL player, I want to know what's being said. I think that they do look into that kind of stuff, and it does affect them a little bit. Not the whole reason, but it does play a big factor. And football is basically just a feeling. You can feel the momentum shifting, and if that's not on your side, you don't have much going for you. And starting out 0-2 coming into a game, the momentum's not on your side. So, I mean, luckily for us, we play against the Browns, which I think the home base will show up and, they'll be pretty loud because it should be a pretty winnable game. And I know we're 0-2, but it's still a winnable game. So, I mean, hopefully that could turn things around for us. And we're on the road in London. Technically a home game, but we're not at home. So, I mean, that could go either way, really. But I think that plays in the Vikings' hands as well.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, people are so quick to jump off the bandwagon if a team starts 0-2. And that's kind of weird because that's just 2 games out of a 16-game season. I mean, we don't know. The Vikings could win the next 14, and all of a sudden, well, we're going to the playoffs. We're going to the Super Bowl.
That's a bit far-fetched, but
Hey, I'm just saying.
In the best case scenario, I suppose.
I'm just trying to illustrate the fact that 0-2 shouldn't be such a big deal, but somehow it is, and that's always baffled me.
I guess I'm kind of on. I can understand how it would make it. It depends on what your expectations are coming into the year. That's what it really falls down to. Because we just came off a 10-6 playoff season and upgraded our roster tremendously with, especially the wide receiver core. So we were expecting more. I think that's just really the feel of Vikings Nation right now.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about expanding our roster, improving it. Had to get some toys for Christian Ponder to play with. Unfortunately, he hasn't really figured out how to play with those toys properly yet.
No, I don't think they're working. They might. I mean, they're working. I don't think the guy operator error. Let's say.
I guess it's like somebody who doesn't know how to play a video game. What button do I press to jump now? There's like 20 of them here.
Well, I'm surprised how little I should say that he's been looking at Kyle Rudolph. He only has about 4 catches, I believe, this whole season so far. And last year he was his number 1 guy. Yeah, you've got Greg Jennings now and, Jerome Simpson, Cordero Patterson. But if ever in trouble, you should check down to Kyle Rudolph more or at least look his way.
And this is something else that baffles me. We got him all these weapons. I mean, you've got 4 guys who, I believe, with the proper quarterback, could all be, at least middle of the road wide receivers, at least have solid seasons. I mean, if Patterson and Jennings and Simpson and Wright and Rudolph, if they had like Aaron Rodgers throwing to them, I think that team might be unstoppable.
We had to say Aaron Rodgers on the Cavalcade.
Jeez,
talking about it if he was a Vikings quarterback.
Sorry.
I don't think that'll fly, especially not after the beating they put on the Redskins today. Oh, I don't want to talk about that.
Yeah.
But
I don't either.
I know what you're saying though, and yeah, that's the whole thing I have against Ponder because I know he's not that guy. Like I don't think he could ever beat that guy for this team, just with the way things have played out.
Yeah, I think that really is something that does frustrate Vikings Nation tremendously because that's why you brought in all this extra talent. That's why you drafted Cordero. That's why you spent the big bucks on Greg Jennings to make Ponder better. And so far, through 2 games this season, we're 0-2. And, we're really... I know I said something about progress in the first segment, but we're not seeing a ton of progress from Christian Ponder, at least not the same kind of progress we should be seeing from a guy who has all these shiny new toys to play with.
Yeah, and if you're not going to see progress in your quarterback, you're simply not going to see progress in your win column. It's not going to happen. And the thing that surprised me a lot, too, that we haven't even touched on yet is the lack of run support that Adrian Peterson's gotten from the offensive line, and just he has not looked like the AP of last year. He's been doing okay, but AP is better than okay. He should be having 150-yard games against, he torches Chicago all the time. He torches Detroit. I don't know what has been stopping him other than that one run.
No, I just hope that the line blocks for him next week and he rips off about 250 against the Cleveland Browns.
Right.
That could be kind of the rebirth of Adrian Peterson, I think. But again,
I don't think he ever died. I'm not saying it's that. I think it's something that'll be easily correctable. I just can't believe we haven't seen it yet. That's all I'm saying.
And I think that will be kind of the coming out party. And that feels weird saying that because Adrian Peterson had his coming out party against the Bears in his rookie year.
Right.
Which is really what I thought I was going to see today with those rainy conditions. But getting ahead of ourselves, well, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves, but getting ahead of ourselves next week in Cleveland, or next week against Cleveland at home, I think we are going to see kind of a rebirth of Adrian Peterson. I think that's where he's going to pick up right where he left off last year and just steamroll the Cleveland Browns. And here's hoping that that'll make things just a bit easier for Ponder.
Yeah, I think it'll definitely be a big day for Peterson. Hopefully a big day for Ponder. I don't know. I just don't know, though. We'll have to see.
Yeah, well, I still say 2-2 going into the bye week, and then from there, it's really tough to say.
Gosh, there's a big cluster of people. I can't even think off the top of my head who they play in that. I know the Packers are in there in late October, and you got a few other good teams.
Sunday night game with the Packers.
Right. I believe
that could be a
Baltimore's in
fun
that
one
mix.
if the Vikings get their act together.
Yeah, it's always an entertaining game. It's either entertaining or it's a blowout the other way, but hopefully that doesn't happen.
And on that note, we will see you on the flip side. Keep on listening to Vikings Cavalcade, and we'll be back shortly.
Don't go anywhere.
You better not go anywhere.
Okay. You're listening to J&B's Vikings Cavalcade.
And here's a really weird statistic. And let me just look this up here on my iPhone. Yes, we only use the most cutting-edge technology here on Vikings Cavalcade.
I thought we had it ready already. Oh, well.
Sorry!
Okay, well, I guess I'll keep the folks entertained while you sit there on your iPhone and try to look it up.
I already have it up.
Okay, how's it going, everybody? Oh, he's got it up. Okay.
Excuse me.
Live from the Twin Cities.
Welcome back for the final segment of today's episode of Vikings Cavalcade. Jake and Brandon are here with you, and we actually have a new friend with us for this segment.
Hey guys, my name is Brian. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
No problem.
No problem at all. So, we just kind of want to talk over some things, and as we've established in this show, the Vikings are 0-2, and that whole thing about 12% of the teams make the playoffs, blah, blah, blah. How do you guys think the season goes from here?
I see us going 7-9 after the first two games because they just haven't shown me enough that they can get it done in the passing game. They haven't shown me enough that they can get it done on defense even. And we have a tough schedule coming up. I mean, we got the Browns and the Steelers, so 2-2 is very possible. But after that, we play teams like Green Bay, Seattle, Baltimore. A lot of these are on the road as well. I don't know. I think we'll get a few wins here and there, but I don't see playoffs at this point.
And that game against Seattle, that's an automatic chalk in my mind. Don't get me wrong, crazier things have happened. I mean, heck, we did beat the Russian team in 1980. It's a miracle thing people were talking about to this day. But if you look at what Richard Sherman was able to do against Anquan Bolden, who absolutely torched Green Bay last week, and the way that he shut down Colin Kaepernick, that defense is just unbelievable. You can go ahead and chalk that one up in the bank. That we're probably not going to win that one, and after that you're looking at possibly a 2-5, maybe a 3-4 team coming around at midway point.
I do think we could win the next 3 games. Like I could see that happening, but outside of that, the winning streaks are going to be far and few between.
I think we beat that Cleveland team. I think we're a 50-50 at best against Pittsburgh. That's just my view take. I think Pittsburgh's a terrible team. Well, I wouldn't say so terrible. Any team that's coached by Tomlin definitely has potential. But I just haven't seen enough from the Vikings to go ahead and chalk up anything at this point as a guaranteed winner.
We really haven't seen anything from Pittsburgh either. That's the Monday night game coming up here this week. And I mean, I think we'll see a bit more from Pittsburgh, and I think maybe you'll be able to gauge from there.
Well, hopefully
the
they
Vikings'
scored 2
chances.
points last week.
I agree with you. My thing about when it comes to high profile, games that are broadcast around America, For the last 4 or 5 years, I haven't seen the Vikings do anything on the national stage. Am I on the only one on that one, guys?
2009 was a pretty national stage, I'd have to say.
Yeah,
but other than that-
Favre on Monday night torched his old team. That was a
I agree
excellent
with
moment.
you, but do you remember the Sunday night game against Arizona as well?
Yeah.
We looked absolutely dreadful, and there was also that Chicago game. I think it was a Thursday night game. AP ended up putting the ball on the ground, and then that double move that was put on Antoine Winfield on the sideline, that was the dagger.
Well, and the Philly game in 2010, that was on a national stage, but it wasn't really originally
That was a
supposed to be.
Tuesday game for
Yeah.
the love of Pete.
It was still national, though.
Yep. Tuesday night football on on ESPN.
How about that? The Vikings have won the only Tuesday night football game in NFL history.
Oh, there you go.
There's a feather in the cap for this franchise. 0-4 on Super Bowl Sunday, but we got one Tuesday night winner.
Tuesday night football.
Where was the theme song on that one?
Okay. So getting back to things, it is tough to say at this point. I agree with Brandon that I think the Vikings win the next 3 games. And then, who knows, you win the next 2 games. You go into a bye week at 2-2. Then I think they do come out and beat Carolina. After that, it is sketchy,
Hopefully.
but
I
who
agree
knows?
with
I
that
mean,
one.
the thing about last year was that the Vikings got out to that 4-1 start, and that gave them a lot of confidence. Sure, things went downhill a bit from there until the end of the season, but still, I'm kind of banking on the same thing this season, that maybe you get a couple of wins the next 2-3 weeks and you build some confidence, and maybe they'll pull off some upsets against the likes of Green Bay, Chicago, Detroit, whoever.
A man can dream.
Yes, we can dream. I sure hope so. But that schedule is just too tough, I think, to overcome. On the road at Seattle, on the road at Green Bay. Still got Chicago to deal with again. I think that one's winnable. But
Hey, they beat Houston last year, and Houston wound up having the number 1 seed in the AFC.
If you also remember, though, that during that stretch, Houston looked absolutely dreadful, and they were in a bit of a tailspin at that point. Now, does that take away from the victory? Absolutely not. You play the teams that you play, and you play them at the time that they're scheduled. But that also being said, you play the teams that they're playing as they're playing during that time, if that makes sense to any of you people out there in viral world.
absolutely. So what are the thoughts on the final records?
Alright, well, I gave you my kind of joke record last night, but I think as of now, honestly, if they can turn things around in the next few weeks here, I still see a 10-win finish. Call me crazy, but
Oh,
I think they can pull it together. They have before,
Jake,
in starts
Jake.
like this.
Jake, I must ask you, it must be lovely to go to Never Never Land on a daily basis.
that is some wishful thinking.
What
right
is
there,
the
but-
sky of the planet that you reside on?
I see 7 and 9. Like, that's nothing to be excited about yet. We'll see what happens.
No disrespect, but you know, if that's where you think the Vikings are, I expect to walk out the door and pick candy canes off the ground and have waterfalls of chocolate.
What do you think they'll finish with, Brian?
I think we're looking at a 5-9, 6-10 team and a possible
5 and 9? Give me 5 and 11.
5-11. Excuse me.
I sure hope not that bad.
Well, I don't know, and I'm probably thinking that we're gonna get like maybe a 7th or 8th pick in the draft, and hopefully we can go out and grab a very special corner if there's one out there. I think we missed it when we passed on Tyrone Matthew.
It's a little bit of a pessimistic Monday, but it has only been 2 games played, so hopefully, I don't know. We still don't know what's to come, but we have a pretty good idea. We all have 3 different ideas of what's going to happen. You think they're going to finish up top still. I think they're going to finish right in the middle. And you're saying 5 and 11, so we'll see what happens.
5-11, 6-10, somewhere in there.
Yep.
Alright, well, I think you've heard our opinions quite clear, and make that of those what you will. And that's it for our show today. Now time to close out, Brandon. Brandon? Brandon! Poor guy was so distraught, I guess he finally ran off. Didn't want to finish the show. I guess all that talking about the Vikings being 0-2 finally got to the poor guy. Well, For Brandon, and for our guest Brian, this is Jake reminding you that, hey, we got 14 games left, people. That's practically an entire season. Don't give up yet.
Ugh, that was pathetic.
Shut up, Richard.